What's up, Star Chasers, and welcome to another speed drawing video. So I was asked by my uni magazine to contribute some more artwork for this coming year, and one of the pieces I was given was a poem which was written by another student, and I had to figure out the artwork for it. The poem is called Who Speaks by Kieran Knock, and it's about a guy who is at home trying to figure out his life. He keeps hearing a sound that is knocking on the walls or knocking inside of his head, I guess, which is really his own conscience trying to speak to him and get him to face the issues he keeps inside. So in this illustration, I wanted to express a sense of loneliness and also depth. One of the lines talks about opening the blinds and peering out the window, and I thought that this would be a really cool image to illustrate, especially since blinds can create a really interesting shape, shadow-wise. I got the sketch down pretty quickly and figured out the character design. However, for the blinds, it was a bit harder for me. I don't often do background work, so to create the perspective, I made a different canvas, which was bigger than my usual one, so that way I could put the vanishing point and try and add some perspective. In the end, I didn't actually use it. Using some of the rectangle tools to make the general window shape and then the blinds themselves. From the part where he pulls down the blinds, the bottom shapes are going to move. Instead of having them be rigid and straight, I used the warp or distort tool so that they would be a little bit curved and wiggle a bit. For the window frame itself, I drew it facing the screen flat, but then use the perspective tool and move the frame a little bit. That way it would be in perspective with the character. At first I was going to try and do like proper perspective, but the image is a close-up, meaning you don't see the whole room. I can't compare the window frame to anything else in the room to give it accurate perspective, but what I can do is compare it to the guy and that he is standing on an angle. So I just eyeballed it and tried to get the perspective as best as I could see it. The most important part of this image is the way the shadows and the light comes through the blinds and influences the character. Often I will color in a character or a scene and then add the shadows on top. But actually this time I'm working in reverse. I'm coloring the shadows and figuring it out how the blinds are going to affect the character. Using a muted purple, I'm drawing in the shadows of where the blind lines are going to cover the character. I'm putting X's in the areas that I want to fill in so that way I won't feel confused, and then just coloring them in. I have this shadow layer on top of everything and I'm using the multiply blending mode in Photoshop. So that means that I can color underneath and the shadows will adjust themselves to be on top of the color. I think this is an important step because I'm going to have multiple shadows. The shadows from the blinds casting onto the character, but also the shadow of the character casting against the back wall or his arm casting across his chest. By working on the shadows in layers, it means I can focus and pay attention and then later go back and add the color, which is actually a very easy step. After finishing the shadows and cleaning up the areas where the blinds are, I decided to work on the lighting. I imagined it could be a very bright morning with yellow sunlight coming through, which is why it's important to have the purple for the shadows because they are composite colors. Very warm, bright sunlight, very dark and cool shadows. I'm going over softly around the edges of the shades, and then with a very harsh yellow over areas of the face or t-shirt that would be right next to the window. After that, closer to the wall where the light is bouncing but not direct, I'm using a softer brush and shading in some of the yellow light as well. Once the light layers are done, I went with a different layer and colored in the main colors of the flesh, the hair, the shirt, and once turning on the light and the shadow layers, I could adjust the blending modes on the right hand side so that the light and the shadows overlap with the colors and create the shadow effects. After adding the color, I then went back with another layer of shadows going around the edges to give the piece a vignette shading. Through the window, I added some trees and highlighted them with some yellow so that the sunlight was going through the branches, adding some more yellow into the room. It had a soft glow and showed the contrast between the shadows and the light. Once everything was completed, I went over into the color mixer, adjusted the colors so that they all fit in nicely with each other, and just added some finishing touches with a little bit of blur, and then we're done. If you like watching me draw, please subscribe to my channel. Also, check out my Instagram page where I upload my finished artworks.